Hello again, and welcome to another session with Best Mindset. Today we're going to go over limiting beliefs. Ultimately, what limiting beliefs are all about is really understanding yourself, getting down to the core of who you are, and really just pulling out what's fact and what's reality when it comes to fear or things that maybe you feel you're not good enough for. What's really cool about Best Mindset is all the training that you're going through ultimately puts action into the steps of the things you learn. So today we're going to go through some things about how you think and how you react to stress and how you manage pressure. But ultimately we're going to put action into making some actual things happen so that when you leave this video tutorial, you'll actually have things in place to start to make change and get over the fear or the limiting belief that you have in your life. So let's start to talk a bit about what we're looking at. So the first thing you're looking at on this screen is the transition curve. Now, before we go into actual limiting beliefs, it's important to kind of understand where they come from and what they're all about. So the transition curve is ultimately a big part of what you go through every day, probably every week, and sometimes every year, and sometimes even there's on a 5-year scale. So let me give you an idea, a small example of what this looks like. So here you have uninformed optimism. What that usually is a point in your life when you're just about to start something new, a new adventure, you're pretty excited about it, you're not sure how it's all going to go. So say an example on a small scale could be maybe you just did a home show, you got a bunch of leads, and it's your first home show and you're thinking this could be a really good way to generate a bunch of work. Then all of a sudden you call some of these leads and maybe say you're halfway through the list and no one said yes to you, people have hung up on you, you're not getting a good response, and you're starting to think, man, maybe I shouldn't even be doing this. And all of a sudden you get to nearing the end of your list and you're like, you know what, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Say you got another 20 names to call, you're not sure if you even want to continue with the list. And you have a choice to make. And right here is where you make your choice. And either you're going to fight through that and keep calling the list and try and figure out what you can do to really improve your results, or you just give up and you move on to something else. And I find when you give up, a limiting belief is formed. You start to tell yourself, you know what, I'm bugging people when I call people. And then the next time you try and call them, you're already here. You're already feeling like, you know what, I'm bugging people when I call them. And so you tell yourself that. Now here's the difference. If you fight through that and you try and make a difference and you say, you know what, I'm going to change the way I'm doing calling, I'm going to change the way I approach people, I'm going to try and learn from this, you actually learn something from it and you get more into informed optimism and you realize, you know what, it's going to be a little harder than I thought it was, but at least I figured out a few things and actually I know how to do it better for next time. Now this happens over and over and over and again in our lives, and sometimes on a big scale. Sometimes the reason we start or stop businesses, even it goes through this giant transition curve of life. And ultimately the biggest thing to pay attention to is when you hit crisis of meaning and you really start to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Maybe why am I running this business? Or why am I spending my time doing these things? If you give up, and if you've had a past history of giving up in that area, you've ultimately formed a lot of limiting beliefs for yourself that have tied you down. Versus if you've really fought through some of the things, think about the ones you've actually fought through and what you've actually learned about yourself and a strength that's become of it. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to work through one of your limiting beliefs. We're going to help you kind of see where it comes from and how to make a second choice, because you ultimately have more than one choice when it comes to crisis of meaning. You can give up or you can fight through it, and what that kind of looks like. Alright, so let's take a look. So on the screen here I have a sheet that we can go through. Now if you don't have this in front of you, you can easily write this on a piece of paper. Just to help you really think through this though, I've kind of got some of these questions in front of you. So the first thing you want to do obviously with your limiting belief is identify it. You want to know what is actually limiting me every day. What is the things I tell myself I can't do because either I feel I'm not good enough or maybe I have just a fear of failure. So here's some things to help you identify. So you ask yourself, what do you fear the most in your business? What are some things that you're really like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Maybe it's calling leads, maybe it's spending money on certain things, whatever it is. And what do you fear you're going to fail at? Ultimately kind of yourself personally. What are you telling yourself that you can't do? What are you limiting yourself in? What do you think you're not good enough for? What are you feeling, I'm just not good enough for this yet. I'm not ready for that step yet. What's your brain screaming? Just no, don't do it. Here's an interesting thing. Your brain loves to protect you. And the reason you form a lot of limiting beliefs, if you have past history of giving up on something, your brain tells you, oh, well, you know what, let's not do that again because that was really painful. So it tells you this is something you should not be engaged in again. When really it's the exact opposite. You want to face your limiting beliefs, overcome them, just like overcoming any fear or overcoming any anxiety, and then you learn something from it and become stronger because of it. So when your brain's screaming to you, no, don't do this, this is too much for you, that's sometimes an indication of a limiting belief. So get through this. So ask yourself some questions, really give it some thought, and figure out what is your limiting belief. What are some things you tell yourself every day or a lot in your business that stops you from taking action on your goals? So I'm going to give you a few minutes, pause the video, and work through some of these questions, and then ultimately come up with your limiting belief. Once you have that, we'll start the video again. Alright, so now that you've got your limiting belief written down, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think through what your life would be like if that was always your reality. So whatever your limiting belief is, say it's I can't do this, or I don't feel good enough for that, or I'm not ready to take this step, imagine that will always be the truth till the day you die. Think of what that actually looks like in your life and realize that could be your reality if you don't make a change. And what I want you to do is I actually want you to think, is the fear, is it forming in your throat? Is it forming in your chest? Is it forming in your stomach? Identify where you feel that fear and score it out of 10 right now. 1 being I'm not afraid at all, I'm totally fine, this doesn't bother me, and 10 being I can't even move out of my chair right now because I'm so unbelievably afraid, or I'm so unbelievably unsure, or there's so much anxiety. Rate it out of 10 so you can get a gauge of where you're at. Okay. Now let's stop thinking about that part of your life and let's look at your second choice. So we talked a bit about the transition curve, and ultimately at some point in your life there could be this fear that's causing you to want to crash and burn. But today I'm going to show you how to make a different decision. We want to get into informed optimism. And to do that, we have to look at the second choice that we ultimately have. So what I want you to do is I want you to understand that your logical mind and your subconscious are fighting you. Your logical mind would say, yes, logically it makes sense to make that next step. Your subconscious is telling you, no, don't do it. It could be unsafe. We're not sure. We don't know the answer yet. Let's just wait and see. Let's just analyze this a little more. Ultimately, your subconscious is trying to keep you safe, and it's telling you that something external could be attacking you, or there's something outside of your own control that's giving you the inability to take action. The reality is, it's all in your head. You have 100% control over what happens outside of you. And I'm sure you've heard of this before and maybe you've thought about this, but ultimately you project your own reality. So if you think that something is going to happen, or you believe that something is the way it is, the actions you take will reflect that, and ultimately you'll create your own reality. So when you have a second choice, it ultimately opens up options for you. And the truth is you do. You have a second choice. And what I want you to think through is what is the polar opposite of your limiting belief. So if your limiting belief is that you're not good enough for something, or if you're not ready for something, the polar opposite is you've always been ready, or you're overqualified for that thing. And then what I want you to do is actually visualize your life like that. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes again to stop the video, but what I want you to think picture is visualize 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year from now, 1 month from now, 20 years from now even. What's your life look like if the exact opposite were true to your limiting belief? What are you doing in your business? What are you doing in your life? What's your confidence like? How are you feeling? What have you accomplished? Think about all those things if that limiting belief didn't exist and the exact opposite were actually true. So I want you to take 2 minutes to actually visualize that. And when you're done visualizing it, I actually want you to write down what that reality looks like. When you're done that, come back to the video. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes. Go ahead. Alright, so now that you have that written down, what do you realize? What are you starting to realize? Your biggest realization is ultimately what your reality could be. It's the opposite, ultimately, of your limiting belief. So if you can write that down and write down what your realization is based on your second choice, ultimately you're writing down a second option for yourself. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to actually circle which one you choose. Do you choose this, your limiting belief, your subconscious thoughts, the things that are holding you back? Or do you choose your second choice, the other reality that's waiting for you just to take action on it? If you choose this, I want you to realize that's ultimately the reality you're going to create for yourself for the next few months, the next few years, moving forward. Given that reality, I want you to score how you feel now. Do you feel 1, pretty good, pretty ready to go? Do you feel 10, totally paralyzed still to your seat? See if that feeling's diminished a little bit. Now here's the most important part. If you choose to make a change, and you choose to go after the opposite of your limiting belief, I want you to write 2 or 3 action steps that you're going to commit to over the next couple weeks to the next couple months to keep doing every day to make sure that that limiting belief turns into the opposite, the polar opposite of that, and you have a realization. Because it'll take a little while. It'll take a little while to prove it to your mind, to your subconscious, that you actually can achieve or you actually are good enough for that thing. But once you've done it a few times, it'll start to become a habit, it'll start to become a part of who you are, and ultimately, it'll become a strength of yours. And if you look back at this chart, you'll get into informed optimism, and you can really move forward. Now, it's not that it's not going to be hard, but it's that it's going to give you the strength to learn something new, move forward on your limiting beliefs. Ultimately, as any business owner, we have a ton of fear in us. It's part of running a business. That's totally fine. But to make a choice, and to have a choice even, is so much more powerful than just to accept that limiting belief. So I trust this will give you something to look forward to over the next couple weeks. Have fun with this, take action, and we'll see you at your next Best Mindset session.